All right, hello everyone, Mr. Barden here. I'm back with a video going on about Arduino and a lot of the circuits and building up a lot of that as part of the programming digital media course that I teach. You may have seen a similar video to this one. I realized in my streaming software I forgot to arrange the, set up the audio capture for whenever I was in this arrangement of cameras, which was most of the video, so I didn't actually get a lot of the audio set up. So I'm going to do this again, and we'll have a second video that we can actually understand everything with. So let's get right to it. On this screen up here, this is going to still be the just my camera screen, so you can have any code and things like that. You'll be able to see me down here at the bottom, more or less like normal, and then I have a second camera hooked up so you can see the hardware I'm building. All right, so I'm just going to jump right into it because, again, I already talked for a while on this video, and we will do some code stuff. So this web page right here, this is for different sensors and a bunch of things like that. This one up here on the screen is the same kind of one as I have down here. It's probably the most common one you'll run into. Mine is not made by Arduino themselves. This is excuse me, coughing and doing this live. These are all open source, so a lot of companies have a lot of this material and they'll make their own version of this. Hopefully that'll minimize the coughing. So you can buy things directly from Arduino. Yeah. And they do have kits of stuff and different things, but again, it's a little on the pricey side, if I'm going to be completely honest. So if you look and find something that's by a different brand, you may find a kit with everything you need for a little less expensive price. So check around, look around. If you're taking this in a school, you more than likely already have a kit. You won't have to go out and get your own, but you can find one from these companies for about $30, give or take, a little bit in each direction. Okay, the reason I wanted to show this site was also because of, I don't want their store, this one right here. This is the web editor, and just like P5 that we've been using in this class, this is a way you can work and do all the code editing for your Arduino in your web browser. I think it's a great tool. I should be able just to sign in. I haven't been on here in a little while, though. And you can find all kinds of sketches and useful tools. I'm going to deal with that later. Again, I don't use this very much. I prefer to use the software you can download. And again, here's, you can see all your sketches and all that. We'll talk about some of these later and get all your examples and things of that nature. But I prefer, personally, this page, right here, and you can go in that same web page. There's a tab says software. There's a link in the bottom, and you can go and download it for the version of your computer that you have, whatever operating system you have. But this is just the software. It does everything else in the web browser, but it's local to your computer. You may find that you prefer using the web one, and that's great. A lot of school computers have a weird amount of restrictions and firewalls into what can and can't be done. So I don't have, I prefer using this one for the classes just because we don't have to deal with all of that. So it just depends on what you have. But here it is. I'm going to make it bigger. So we have that there. It's very, very bare bones. It does what it needs to do. But here, actually, you may not have seen that on the screen. And there's a function that loops over and over again. And that's where we do a good chunk of what the Arduino is doing and checking for and running, just like P5. This is built out of the C coding language and not out of JavaScript, so there are some differences. I will bring those up as we come across them, but for right now, for today's video, the important ones are, instead of function, today we're going to see void is kind of the key word that determines it's the same thing, but we don't use function, we use void right here. We'll sometimes use other things, but generally that's, for this class, you'll see that's kind of the relationship between there. The other one is that you have to have semicolons at the end of every line in your code. Otherwise, it will not work. So if you've been doing this course and in P5 and been forgetting your semicolons, you're gonna learn to use them now, because otherwise none of this will work. Those are gonna be probably the big things we run into right away. And throughout these videos, as more stuff crops up, I will, bring it up. So let's go into this. So I've got the Arduino right here. My USB cable is only so long, so we have it here. But I'm gonna just plug it right into the port, and it kind of powers up, does some hey, is it working? Is it running? And at the moment, it is. Normally, this light right here is solid. It's got this board will keep whatever the previous code that was sent to it on the board until we update it with new code. So if I sent this to it, it's all plugged in via USB. Just real quick, if you click on Tools, you want to make sure that the board matches whatever model of board you have, and the port is the correct one. So if you have a different, if you plug it in to your computer in one USB port and then unplug it and plug it into another one, you may have to update the port right here. And generally, it will say, like, here are the ports. If you run into any problems, it'll tell you there, and then it resets the board and it does it. So now it has that default thing of it's doing nothing. It just has the light on. All right, so that's the first part. The other thing I have on this window down here are a few parts. So basically, we'll be building a version of that blinking light in just a moment, but we'll be using a breadboard for this. What a breadboard is it allows you to very easily make electrical circuits and connections with Arduino and things like that that are customizable. You can take things in, put them in, take them out, swap them around very easily. It's not like this where all the things are soldered in. Like these are not coming out. It's all we'll look at my debatable solder job on this. But you can see it's not, like this is not coming out without breaking it. It's committed. It's soldered in. This, we can take things in and out easily. So along the sides here, all of these little holes are connected. So this is what we'll end up connecting to the Arduino. There's a negative and a positive current, so your positive and ground. You're going to want red for positive, black for ground. That's the standard. So use that. But now, once these are connected to the board, all of these will be connected to the positive and ground. That is different than what we have right here. So on these, on mine, they're all numbered here. So everything that's where my finger is number 9, this column, these 5 are all connected. So, if I plugged in, like here's an LED with its 2 ends. If I plugged them both into the same column with the same number, like so, I don't know, it's a little hard to see. Can I do this and make it easier to see? Yeah, a little bit. But basically, it's facing the wrong way. We want to twist it and turn it 90 degrees, so that way the leads are in 2 different numbered slots. All right, that's kind of important because, again, if I were to connect a pin here, everything in this column is now connected to that, and I can plug it in over here or somewhere else and connect it to all the stuff. So that lets us connect several things to one thing, so we can branch out our circuits. We can get a lot of stuff in parallel with each other. It's a very useful tool when you get into it. I feel like I'm not doing the best job explaining all that through the camera. Again, once you see it, you will, I think it'll click. But again, all of these rows are connected. There's this big gap down the middle, so this top side is not connected to this bottom side at all. So what I like to do is take another wire of some kind and just connect positive to positive on the other side and negative to negative on the other. You really should use the color cord for this, but I just kind of grabbed a few wires, to be completely honest. But now, by connecting these like so, when I plug this into the Arduino, both sides will have power. So let's do that. I'm going to take I'm actually going to do it like this just so they're a little bit closer and plug them into the other side. Like so. Just so that way these reach my board a little bit easier. So these are all going to plug into these little black headers right here. And on the other side, there's generally 3 sections. On the top, from this angle, these are the digital inputs and outputs. So we can take these pins and say, I want to send electricity out of here, or I want to receive electricity from it. That's going to be very useful. We're going to be using this as an output today. On the bottom over here, we have an analog. These are only inputs. And we'll get to that in a second. And then this one over here is all of the power related pins. If you can kind of see, they're all labeled. There we go. So we're going to find the right ones. On that power section, I'm going to plug my black wire into a ground pin and my red wire into the pin labeled 5 volts. Just like so. You can do some things need a different amount of voltage. There's another one that says 3.3 volts. For this class, we're going to just use the 5 volt pin. All right, so I've got that right there. And that's all connected. We'll come back to the LED in just a moment. I'm going to jump into the code here, and I'm going to just go to File, Examples, and these are a bunch of just example codes that you can try a bunch of stuff. A lot of libraries that come with certain components will have some examples that you can kind of explore around with. So like say I wanted to, here's some examples using some EEPROM or some serial things or other libraries. So if I wanted a library specifically with the Adafruit MPU 6050, here's some examples of how that can work and things like that. I'm going to go up to this first section. This will be on everyone's software by default. The other stuff can vary depending on what you have installed. But under Basics, there's one called Blink. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to open up a new window. I'm going to get rid of all these comments. If you really want to read through them, you can pause the video. But there it is. In the setup function, we have this line right here. It says pin mode, LED built-in output. Pin mode is a function. Why? Oh, my battery died in my camera. That's a problem. Okay, well, this will be frozen in the bottom for a bit. Well, in that case, I'm going to swap to here, and I'll just hold it up to this camera because I don't want to record this for a third time. So the pin mode right here, LED, this just says, hey, we have this digital pin. Digital pins can either send out electricity or read in the electricity coming in. So we have to tell it what pin and whether, which of those we want. So the LED built in is the LED on the board. This one kind of right here, we can kind of you can see it on the camera. It's that orange light. That's the built-in LED. It's on the circuit board, and we're going to take that pin and we're going to output electricity. That's what's powering the light. That's going to happen at the beginning. Then we have down here, we're going to digital write. That means we're going to send information through that output. So we're going to say, look at the built-in LED pin, set that value to high, send out electricity. Then we're going to wait 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second, and then we're going to send it to low. So what we're going to have is the light's going to blink, and that's all this sketch is going to do. Conveniently, pin number 13 on the Arduino Uno is the same one that the LED that's built in is connected to. So that's how we're going to make this circuit board here on the breadboard. And we'll be able to see the blink pop up. So I'm going to take my my LED and I'm going to plug it in just like so. There's a longer end and a shorter end to the leads here. The longer one has to face the positive direction. The electricity can only flow through this in one direction. If we have it backwards, it's not going to work. So I'm going to take this, plug it into my breadboard, and I'm going to go directly from the positive side to that same row that I had the longer input in. We also need a resistor. I think this one's 200, 220, 200 ohms. It's approximate enough for this to work. Is a red LED that is just permanently on. All right, I wanted to do it like this first on purpose. So again, this red LED is permanently on because it is just getting the power directly from the positive light. It's not getting it from the pin that the other LED, that the blinking LED is from. It's just getting power directly from the source with no changes at all. So to change that up, I'm going to upload this code to the Arduino. It's going to do its thing, and again, it's a little hard to see because my cables are kind of short for this camera, but it's now blinking. You can kind of see that there. This is why I wanted to have two cameras, but the battery died. So I'm going to take this, and instead of having this wire plugged directly into the positive electricity, I'm going to plug it into pin number 13 on the board. It helps if I plug it into the right hole. So in just a second, I'm going to show this, but now you'll see that this light is blinking in tandem with the built-in light. So here's that one, here's this one. You should be able to see that they're both blinking together. And that's just because, again, on the Arduino Uno, pin number 13 and the built-in LED happen to be the same pin. This may be different if you have a different model of board. All right, so that's it. That's the basic of the first example. You could set this up with other stuff if you had some other things, but maybe besides an LED that wanted to get that same electricity source. It's kind of up to whatever you need. Again, just to illustrate this, the Arduino doesn't really care what's plugged into it. It's just sending and receiving voltages. So if I took that board I showed earlier and plug it in, then now this light is blinking with the same thing, and I'm just really running low on wire length, so that's why it's down in the corner. And that's that. I'm gonna end it here a second time and get this battery charged because it was working great until it wasn't. This is my first video with this kind of setup, so I'm working out all the bugs. I guess technically the version that you didn't see was the first one, but that's just because it didn't have sound for 80% of it. All right, so if you enjoyed this, you learned something, great. Give it a like, comment, all the YouTube stuff. Consider subscribing. Again, less issues as we go along. So thank you for bearing with me for that. As we keep going, we'll get a little more complex with different ways we can work with the different signals and why that might be useful. And we'll start working with analog sensors and things like that. And ultimately, we'll get into having our Arduino communicate with our P5 sketches. That is the end goal of this course. All right, so I'm gonna end it right here. All the some helpful links are down in the description below. If you have any questions, definitely put those in the comments, and I will answer them as I see them.